There are places where the dark never sleeps, where shadows whisper, and the unknown watches from just beyond the veil. Supernatural horrors, unsolved mysteries, and things that should not exist. Once you hear these stories, they may never leave you. The House on Blackwater Road. Part 1. The Road to Nowhere. The road stretched endlessly into the night, swallowed by gnarled trees that loomed like silent sentinels. Rain pattered against the windshield in erratic bursts, and the wipers struggled to keep up. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white against the black leather. The headlights of his aging sedan cut a narrow path through the dark, illuminating only the creeping mist that curled around the road like spectral fingers. The trees on either side were ancient, their limbs twisted and barren, stretching like skeletal fingers toward the sky. The air smelled damp, earthy, yet there was something else beneath it. A faint, acrid scent, like burning hair or decayed wood. It clung to the interior of his car, filling his nostrils with every breath. He tried rolling down the window for fresh air, but the button refused to work. The night was pressing in from all sides. He wasn't supposed to be here. Blackwater Road wasn't on any map, and yet his GPS had led him here, insistently recalibrating every time he tried to reroute. The gas station attendant had warned him too. "You don't want to take that road, son," the old man had muttered as he wiped his hands on a greasy rag. "Not unless you got a death wish." Daniel had laughed it off, convinced it was just another small-town superstition, an urban legend meant to keep outsiders away. But now, with his phone flashing, no service, and the road stretching on endlessly, the old man's words gnawed at him. A knot of unease twisted in his gut. The darkness here felt alive, pressing against the car like a living thing, muffling the sound of the rain, the tires, even the engine. The wipers dragged across the glass in slow, agonized streaks, struggling to keep up with the erratic downpour. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, his GPS flickered and died. The screen went black. A low thump sounded from the trunk. Daniel's breath hitched. He forced himself to breathe evenly, convincing himself it was nothing. Maybe a loose tire iron or some old tool shifting with the car's movement. He kept driving. The road wasn't ending. His odometer ticked forward, but he seemed to be making no progress. The trees never thinned. The mist never lifted. The house never changed. Wait. His heart slammed against his ribs. There, on the side of the road, stood a house. A decrepit, hulking Victorian with weathered wood and dark windows looming over the road like it had been watching him all along. Its windows gaped like empty eye sockets, and the roof sagged in places as though the house itself had grown weary with age. The thing that made his blood run cold wasn't the house itself. It was the fact that he had already passed it. Twice. He slammed the brakes. Silence. The rain had stopped. The wipers dragged one last time across the windshield, smearing streaks of water that never fully disappeared. He could hear his own breathing, shallow and too fast. The house stood there, patient, waiting. The thump came again, louder this time. It came from inside the car. Daniel turned, pulse pounding in his ears. The back seat was empty. The trunk. It had to be the trunk. With shaking hands, he reached for the door handle and stepped into the humid night air. The silence was suffocating. No wind, no rain, no insects. Just him, the house, and whatever was making that sound. Another thump, then a scrape, like nails dragging across metal. Daniel's stomach lurched. He fumbled for the trunk release and popped it open. Empty. A gasp tore from his throat as something cold brushed against his ear. He spun, but no one was there. Only the house, looming closer than before. The front steps seemed slick with moisture, the wooden boards warped and swollen. Its front door was open. The thump came again, but this time it wasn't from the trunk. It was from inside the house, and it was calling his name. A whisper, barely more than a breath. Daniel. It came from deep within the house, from somewhere past the yawning blackness beyond the doorway. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't a trick of the wind. Something inside knew him. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He stepped backward, almost tripping over his own feet. His body was screaming at him to run, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He could feel the weight of the house's gaze on him, a silent demand pulling him toward it. Something was waiting, and it wasn't going to wait much longer. Part 2. The doorway to nowhere. The voice wasn't loud, nor was it insistent. It was just a whisper, faint and rasping, curling through the damp night air like a forgotten breath. Daniel. His body locked up. The name wasn't yelled, wasn't demanded. It was just spoken, softly, lovingly, as if whoever was inside the house had been waiting for him. A rational part of his brain screamed to get back in the car, to drive, to never look back. But the house, God, the house was magnetic. It held him in place like an iron chain wrapped around his ribs. His feet carried him forward before his mind could catch up. Each step toward the porch felt heavy, deliberate, like moving through deep water. The wooden steps groaned beneath him as he ascended. The porch boards were warped and splintered, damp from the mist that coiled around the house. Something had clawed at the wood, leaving deep gouges near the threshold. The railing was broken, jagged wood protruding like teeth. The door, ancient and heavy, stood slightly ajar, revealing only a yawning darkness beyond. It was too dark. Not just the absence of light, but a void, like something had swallowed every fragment of illumination inside. A chill ran through him. The air smelled damp and stale, thick with the scent of rot and something else, something familiar. It clung to his skin, coiling into his lungs, teasing the edges of memory. His fingers trembled as he reached for the door. The moment his skin made contact, the house seemed to exhale. The door swung open with a slow, groaning creak. Beyond the threshold was a grand foyer, dimly lit by candle sconces lining the walls. The flickering flames cast shifting shadows, making the room seem alive, breathing in tandem with the house. Dust hung in the air, disturbed only by the faintest movement, like someone had just passed through moments before. A large, winding staircase curved upward, disappearing into shadow. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing old, water-damaged wood beneath. The floor, warped and uneven, groaned beneath his hesitant steps. A faded rug lay in the center, patterned with intricate designs that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. He turned back toward the car. The road was gone. Blackwater Road had simply vanished. The trees, the mist, the endless stretch of asphalt, erased. In their place was an unbroken field of black, a void stretching beyond where the road had once been. It was not darkness in the normal sense. It was nothingness, an emptiness so profound that his mind rebelled against it. There was nothing, nothing but the house. A whisper curled around his ears again, closer this time, more familiar. Daniel. His mother's voice. His stomach dropped. He hadn't heard her voice in 15 years. Not since the night she disappeared. The air shifted, grew heavier. A damp, cloying warmth settled against his skin. as though something unseen had moved into the space beside him. A cold sweat broke out along his spine. Then he saw it, just at the top of the stairs, a silhouette, thin, hunched, swaying slightly, as though the weight of existence itself was too much to bear. "Mom!" His voice barely left his throat. The figure shifted, took one step forward. The dim candlelight licked at its face, revealing skin that was too pale, stretched too tight. Its eyes were two large, black pits that swallowed the light. The mouth curled upward in a grotesque imitation of a smile, lips peeling back too far, revealing teeth that were jagged, uneven, and too many. The thing shuddered, its shoulders twitching in unnatural motions, the limbs disjointed, like a marionette whose strings had been poorly cut. "Mom!" The thing wearing her skin opened its mouth. A sound came out, but it wasn't words. It was wet, gurgling, a drowning echo of something trying to remember how to speak. Daniel stumbled backward, his body screaming at him to run, to move, to do anything but stand frozen in terror. The air thickened around him, pressing against his chest, making it hard to breathe. Then the thing spoke again. "Come inside, Daniel." The words were wrong, stretched, like they had been chewed up and spat out by something that didn't quite understand how human mouths were supposed to form speech. The smile widened. The thing took another step forward. Daniel turned and ran. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more content like this.